22 in the warrant article, in support of conservation of that region, either by easement or by purchase by a nonprofit conservation organization. And that's a great resolution. I didn't bring my copy. I came and picked it up from the town clerk today, but I didn't bring it with me to read to you. And perhaps somebody here has a copy, I don't know.
I do, right here.
Oh, great, so maybe you'll read it later. And that was excellent in support of this, this project. However, I've come tonight to ask for another letter of support, simply to essentially affirm that the town is still behind conserving that land. It is owned by Bob Bordeaux, who has graciously offered to do what's called a bargain sale of the easement, which means the easement is the value of the development rights on the property. And because of the location, that could be valuable property to put houses on. But the town doesn't want that, nor do we in Moose Mountains Regional Greenways. And so Bob is willing to turn over those rights and say, I will never develop that property. That's what a conservation easement means. And the price of development, or the value of development, would be about $365,000, and which Bob would like to get for saying I won't ever develop it. However, he has said I will reduce that amount to $265,000. In other words, he's donating $100,000 of it. But we have to raise the other $265,000 to pay him, because he's giving up his rights to develop the land. It will never be developed if that easement is placed on it. It will be maintained as forest and wildlife habitat. So I'd like to know if the town still supports that notion of conserving that land, and if so, to please write a letter in support of our grant request to get help for funding this easement. Yes?
I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
What's it going to cost the town?
The town is not committing any money to this project. I'm simply asking for your support.
Okay. And secondly, if the conservation easement is granted,
Yes.
what restrictions does that put on that land as far as its uses?
I asked Bob Bordeaux that today. He said it can still be used by snowmobilers and pedestrians. There's always public access for an LCHIP easement or an LCHIP project. However, as is usual, there will not be wheeled vehicles allowed. So no ATVs and no bicycles, those sorts. And that's, I believe, to protect the...
What about four-legged creatures?
Horses.
Horses, dogs?
Horses. You know, I didn't ask him specifically about horses. Do you happen to know what the rules are from LCHIP on horses, do you?
There is no specific rule.
So it probably would be Bob's
It's a,
decision.
yeah, Fish and Game is also involved in this. And,
Right.
and it's probably going to follow the boilerplate largely of a Fish and Game easement. And I've read those and I've never seen that.
So it'll still allow hunting and...
Oh, yes.
And all that on there.
Yes.
You know, that Bob still will own the property.
Right.
The terms of the easement are a negotiation between him and the easement holder, which is Fish and Game. So as far as I know, there's been nothing said about it.
Because I know with some of them, they do have restrictions on them that don't allow things like horseback riding. They don't allow hunting. They don't allow...
I specifically asked him today, what restrictions on public use? And the only thing he said is wheeled vehicles.
Is there any portion of that, the top, I'll say the top of it, that he's holding out? Or is it everything from...
The 545 acres would be the conservation easement.
I understand.
And I don't know exactly where the boundaries go, but I assume the other 55, which made up the full 600 before, is where the snow...
It's right there where the tubing park is,
Yes.
right.
And none of it goes up the side where he could put a cell tower, that type of stuff?
Bob described to the planning board that the area, the boundary line would be the existing tree line at the top of those. So he would be the up to the tree line would stay with the lodge. Everything above that would be part of the other part of the easement. And the action in front of the planning board is a subdivision, because I guess as some party in this, maybe it's Fish and Game, wants the easement on a full lot, a full parcel. And so
He would subdivide the two pieces.
My understanding is the current plan is that he will be coming to the planning board to do a minor subdivision, to divide the one large parcel into two parcels, one of which would have, in its entirety, be going in, having an easement put on it.
The conservation easement.
Yes, and in our discussion last night at the planning board, I don't think we've come to any firm conclusions, but it looks like there are not very many restrictions, if any restrictions, on how to do a subdivision in the rec zone. So for example, in RA1, you need 250 feet of road frontage, you need a minimum lot size, blah, blah, blah. None of that appears to in the rec 1 zone. And so I think that it may be allowable for him to not have road frontage for that back piece. And, so it may be that he can just sort of, where he wants to put that boundary line, he can.
Is it really a subdivision or is it just an easement?
No, it would be I understand what Rob is saying.
Part of the process, one of these parties is asking him to do a subdivision, so the easement is on a full parcel. I'm not sure whether it's his bank or whether it's, because he's got a mortgage, I guess, still, and so he needs to, he's gonna end up with a mortgage, I believe, still on that front parcel. Somewhere in the process, I don't know where, somebody wants to make it clean and have it be two parcels.
Right.
But that's in the hands of the planning board, and the request tonight is merely whether the town, through the selectmen, would write a letter in support of a conservation easement.
Correct,
Not a subdivision, just a conservation easement.
yes.
Eddie, you had your hand up.
No, he spoke
Okay,
identically to
Tom.
what I was going to speak to.
Would there be any change in the property tax consequences to the town? Once the easement went on, would we lose any property tax for that? Or would the tax stay the same?
My understanding is that it's currently under current use, so
Yes.
that there would be no change.
There wouldn't be any
I
change
believe it would be-
in the income.
It would still be a current use property.
Yeah, right, so it'd be tax neutral.
So the state Fish and Game's going to pay current use tax?
It's not Fish and Game's property, it would still be Bob Bordeaux's.
Yes,
Okay.
he's still the owner.
Okay.
Right.
It's just that he can't have a development after an easement is
Yeah.
placed.
Let me read you what the legal counsel advises, because I've already checked with Laura on that. As the owner of the property, Mr. Boudreau is certainly free to burden it with a conservation easement, which would prevent the future development of the property. This is independent of any zoning restrictions which restrict the use of the property, although certainly no conservation easement can allow uses on the property which are not otherwise allowed by zoning. Now, he can't change it. It's what the town allows, and that's all. If the town has specific concerns about a conservation easement on the property, such as whether the easement might restrict public access, then it would certainly be appropriate to address those concerns prior to taking any position on the conservation easement. We have written regulations through the planning board as to what Mr. Boudreau is allowed to do and not do. So this really doesn't change that, to my knowledge.
How would the public have access to this?
Just like they do now.
How do they now? I've never been up there. To that top part, how do they have access? If he owns the bottom 55 acres or everything to the tree line, how do you get?
There would have to be a right of way. And that would be
There
something
are-
that the planning boards would have to
Yeah,
look at.
you can there are trails that you can reach the top of the mountain to from off of Bob's property. And also, I've gone up there from the ski area, as far as I know.
I
it's
believe
never-
it's this line right here. I believe there's Bob said, I think that there's Fish and Game,
Yeah, they own both sides of the lake.
right, and so there would be this access through this lane right here, I think is what Bob said last night.
So if I, as one of the public, wanted to go up there, walked up to the top without asking him, because of the easement, how do I get to that?
You go up to Moose Mountain Lake and across.
Yeah, you'd have to go up Hanson Road. I mean, if he didn't want you going across his property, you would have to go up Hanson Road to Mount Lake, and then through the top of that ridge and back across headed towards Wakefield.
However, we all know he wants people there because he's trying to run a business in the recreation area.
So you would think some type of easement of 15-foot hiking path or something might make.
That would be up to the planning
He does
board.
have state snowmobile trails running through the property, which he has agreed to have there, and that gives the people right
Right.
to use that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, now, moving another step down the road, they were asking for a letter. Tom Giguere was nice enough to sit down and write a letter for our consideration. So let me read that, and, or do you want to wait?
no, go ahead.
This is addressed to Dorothy Taylor, Executive Director of the Land, Community, and Heritage Investment Program, which is the way they wanted it, I believe. I'm writing to voice Brookfield's support of Moose Mountain Regional Greenways grant application to LCHIP. The goal of putting a conservation easement on 545 acres of open land fits well with Brookfield's desire to maintain its reputation as a desirable place to live. We are especially pleased that this land abuts 2 large parcels already conserved, and that's by the Fish and Game, enhancing the recreational value of this conservation easement. In addition, residents passed Warrant Article 22, stated below at the March 11th, 2008 town meeting, a resolution in support of conserving all or part of the Moose Mountain ski area. Whereas the Moose Mountain ski area is one of the most visible and scenic features of the town of Brookfield, and whereas the Moose Mountain ski area has provided the residents of Brookfield with the opportunity for various forms of outdoor recreation for many decades, and whereas the Moose Mountain ski area is a core focus area of the Land Conservation Plan for New Hampshire's coastal watersheds, prepared by the New Hampshire Estuary Program and Coastal Program, and whereas the people of Brookfield wish to preserve most or all of the Moose Mountain ski area in its natural and undeveloped state in order to protect the amenities described above. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town supports efforts to permanently protect the Moose Mountain ski area by a conservation easement and/or ownership by a non-profit organization or government agency whose mission is the protection of natural resources. This was done by petition, majority vote required. The results passed by a show of hands, 47 to 18. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have further information and it's ready for my signature, should we agree to something like that.
Well written, Mr. Brown.
I did not write it.
I know.
Very good. Hey, when there's talent around, you...
Do you want to look at this?
No, I wasn't.
Anyway, so I'll open it up for discussion to the meeting right now for anybody here that would like to make a comment.
I'd just like to add, I think, if I understand this correctly, this letter of support is going to go along with a package to the LCHIP department in hopes of getting some grant money to help with this $265K that's going to Mr. Bordeaux. That, if they approve that and they get involved in this package, it will only come with the requirement that the land be accessible to the public, which it is now, just on Bob's word, but if this goes forward, then it'll be written down and
It's
legal
mandated.
access.
Yeah, it's mandated at
That
that
we'll have
point.
access, so, well, I think this only gives the town better access to the property, and when there are no ramifications as far as taxes go, I think I see it as a positive from my point of view.
Mr. Nason,
Yes, sir.
you got a comment?
Nope, I'm keeping comments to myself.
Selectman.
Man owns the property. I'm all for a man doing what he needs to do with his property.
Bill.
As long as they're not asking the town to
Foot the bill.
put part of it, that's fine.
We're not giving up any tax?
No, I meant as far as we're gonna come back a year later, there's gonna be a thing presented to the town meeting that we want the town to put up $100,000 to help offset the cost of this. As long as that's not in the agenda, I have no problem.
Remember how the last town meeting went when that happened?
So, under the conditions of that, I have no problem.
Do I hear a motion?
So
to
moved.
Write the letter in support of this.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 This is a fast rate.
we will have